Welcome to Wake Up and Rise. I'm Edward Collins, and I'm glad you're here. Today's episode looks beyond productivity and intensity to ask a deeper question. What does high performance actually require? We'll talk about energy habits and sustainability under pressure. Joining me is Dr. Eleanor Brooks, a doctor who studies how lifestyle, energy, and daily habits affect performance over time. Dr. Brooks, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Edward. I'm really glad to be here. Conversations like this matter, especially because so many people feel tired today and don't fully understand where that tiredness is coming from.
That's exactly why I wanted to start with you. Let's begin with something that sounds simple, but usually isn't. When people hear the expression high performance, they often associate it with money, results, productivity, or status. From your point of view, what is high performance?
For me, high performance is having energy to do what your life asks of you. That's the clearest definition. It's waking up in the morning with enough energy to take care of your body, to work well, to teach, to lead, to contribute, and then getting home and still having energy to be present with your family. High performance is not just about professional results. It's about being able to perform well in all the roles you have.
So it's not something that starts at work.
Exactly. High performance doesn't begin at work. It begins in the body. Most people try to perform more by pushing harder at work, but they ignore sleep, nutrition, physical activity, and daily habits when the body is neglected. Performance collapses everywhere else.
That's interesting because many people believe the opposite, that discipline means ignoring the body and pushing through.
And that belief is one of the biggest mistakes people make. The body is not an obstacle to performance. It's the foundation of it. When you don't take care of your body, you're not being disciplined. You're being inefficient.
You've said before that for people who are already successful or carry responsibility, high performance becomes almost mandatory.
Yes, because as your life evolves, your responsibilities grow, expectations grow, people depend on you, your team, your family, your patients, your students. If you don't have energy, you simply can't fulfill what your life demands in that sense. High performance stops being a personal preference and becomes a practical necessity.
A lot of people listening right now might recognize themselves in that. They have responsibilities, but they feel exhausted. Why do you think so many people feel tired all the time?
There are two main reasons. The first is that people are spending energy in the wrong way. The second is that they are producing very little energy, and most people are doing both simultaneously.
Let's start with spending energy the wrong way.
One of the biggest issues today is what we call decision fatigue. Every decision you make during the day costs mental energy. The brain works very much like a muscle. If you keep using it nonstop, it gets tired. The problem is not making important decisions. The problem is making too many unnecessary ones.
Can you explain what you mean by unnecessary decision?
Sure. Think about daily life, notifications on your phone, emails, messages, what to wear, what to eat, when to respond. Each one seems small, but each one requires a decision. Even deciding not to act costs energy over the course of a day. This drains people without them realizing why they feel exhausted by the evening.
Even resisting distractions costs energy.
Exactly. If your phone lights up and you choose not to check it, that decision already consumes mental energy. That's why organization and structure are so powerful when decisions are made in advance. The brain doesn't have to negotiate all day long.
So it's not about doing more, but about wasting less energy.
That's right. Productivity is not about squeezing more tasks into the day. It's about protecting your energy so you can do what actually matters well.
Many people associate high performance with intensity, but what you're describing sounds more like strategy.
Exactly. High performance is strategic. It's understanding that energy is finite. If you spend it carelessly, you won't have it when you need it. Most at work and relationships are in moments that require clarity.
That reframes the entire conversation.
It does, and it's uncomfortable at first because it forces people to look at how they live, not just how they work.
That's why many people resist.
Yes, because changing habits feels harder than pushing harder, but pushing harder without energy always ends the same way.
Which is burnout.
Exactly.
You mentioned burnout, and that's a word people hear a lot today, but before burnout happens, there's usually a long road of physical and mental exhaustion. How does the body start to lose energy in the first place?
Most of the time, it starts with neglecting basic things. Sleep is the clearest example. People underestimate how much poor sleep drains energy. They think sleeping less will give them more time to work, but the opposite happens. When you don't sleep well, your body doesn't recover, your brain doesn't reset, and the next day you're already starting at a deficit.
And many people normalize that deficit.
Exactly. They wake up tired and think that's all just how life is. They drink coffee, push through, and repeat the cycle. But chronic fatigue is not normal. It's common, but it's not normal.
What actually happens in the body when sleep is consistently poor?
Several things, hormones related to hunger and satiety get dysregulated, which leads people to crave more sugar and processed food. Stress. Hormones stay elevated, cognitive performance drops, decision making becomes worse. So the person not only feels tired, but they also start making choices that further reduce energy.
It becomes a vicious cycle.
Exactly. Poor sleep leads to worse decisions, and worse decisions lead to even poorer sleep. That's why sleep should be one of the first things people look at when they feel exhausted.
Some people say I'll sleep better when my life slows down, but life rarely slows down on its own.
That's true. Sleep doesn't improve by accident. It improves by priority. People don't need perfect sleep routines, but they need consistency. Going to bed and waking up at roughly the same time already makes a huge difference.
Beyond sleep, food plays a big role as well.
A massive role. Energy comes from what we eat. If someone's diet is based on ultra processed foods, refined sugars, and constant snacking, the body stays in a state of inflammation, and an inflamed body produces less energy. People often say, I eat, but I still feel tired. The question is not how much you eat, but what you eat.
And inflammation doesn't always feel dramatic.
Exactly. It's often silent, low-grade inflammation makes people feel sluggish, mentally foggy, unmotivated. They don't feel sick, but they don't feel well either. That's a dangerous place because people get used to it.
What about exercise? Many people say they're too tired to exercise.
That's one of the biggest paradoxes. Exercise consumes energy in the moment, but it increases energy production long term. When someone is tired and avoids movement, they usually become even more tired over time. The body adapts to what you demand from it. If you demand nothing, it produces less.
So movement is not optional if someone wants more energy.
Exactly. It doesn't mean extreme training. It means consistency, strength training, some cardiovascular activity, regular movement. These signal the body to produce more energy at the cellular level.
You often say that people try to fix energy problems with shortcuts.
Yes, they look for supplements, stimulants, hacks. Those can help in specific contexts, but they don't replace fundamentals. If someone sleeps poorly, eats badly, doesn't move, and lives under constant stress, no supplement will fix that.
Stress is another big factor.
Absolutely. Chronic stress drains energy aggressively. When someone is anxious all the time, they're mentally living in the future, imagining problems that may never happen. That constant anticipation burns energy. Depression does something similar, but oriented toward the past. Both states consume enormous mental resources.
So mental health is directly connected to physical energy.
Completely, a person can be physically healthy on paper, but if they're constantly anxious or emotionally overwhelmed, their energy will be low. Mental health is not separate from performance. It's part of it.
Many people feel guilty when they're tired, as if it's sign of moral failure.
And that guilt makes things worse. Energy problems are not solved by self-criticism. They're solved by understanding how the system works. When people understand that energy depends on sleep, food, movement, and mental state, they stop blaming themselves and start adjusting their habits.
That understanding alone can be relieving.
It is, because it gives people a sense of control. Instead of saying I'm broken, they can say something in my routine is misaligned.
If someone listening wants to start improving energy at the body level, where should they begin?
Start with sleep, then look at food quality, then add consistent movement. These three alone already change most people's energy levels dramatically. Everything else builds on that foundation.
It sounds simple, but it requires honesty.
Exactly. And consistency. Energy is not built in one day. It's built through daily habits repeated over time.
Earlier, you mentioned decision fatigue, and I think many people hear that term but don't fully grasp how much it affects their daily energy. Can we go deeper into that?
Absolute. Decision fatigue is one of the biggest invisible drains of energy today. The brain has a limited capacity to make decisions. Every choice you make consumes a bit of mental energy. When that energy runs low, your ability to decide well decreases.
Even if the decision seems small,
Especially the small ones. Let's take a very common example, smartphones. Imagine someone working on a document, fully focused. Their phone is on the desk with notifications enabled. Every time the screen lights up, the brain reacts, even if the person doesn't touch the phone. A decision happens. Should I check this now or later? That decision already costs energy.
So the cost exists even without action.
Exactly. People think decision fatigue only happens when you act, but it also happens when you resist. Resisting a distraction still consumes mental resources. Multiply that by dozens or hundreds of notifications per day. And by the end of the day, the person feels exhausted without understanding why.
That explains why people often say they feel tired even on days when they didn't do anything physically demanding.
Yes, mental fatigue can be just as intense as physical fatigue, and modern life is designed to constantly demand micro decisions from us.
How can people reduce that?
By structuring their day so fewer decisions are required, one very practical approach is creating time blocks for communication. Instead of checking messages all day, you decide in advance when you will respond. That way, the brain stops negotiating every few minutes.
So the decision is made once, not repeatedly.
Exactly. You decide once and then you follow the plan. This saves a surprising amount of energy.
If you've made it this far and found this content useful, consider leaving a like. If you want more content like this, subscribe to our channel and enable notifications to stay connected with Wake Up Rise. Now let's get back to the conversation. You were just talking about. You also mentioned clothing choices as an example.
Yes, it's a simple but powerful example. Many people open their closet in the morning and spend time deciding what to wear. That's another decision. Some people in highly demanding professions reduce that by standardizing their clothing, not because they don't care about style, but because they care about preserving mental energy.
So it's not about wearing the same thing every day, but about reducing friction.
Exactly. You can have a small set of pre-planned combinations. The key is removing the need to decide in the morning. When decisions are automated, energy is conserved.
Training schedules are another area where people struggle.
Very much so. Many people say they want to exercise regularly, but they don't fix a specific time for it. So every day becomes a new decision. Should I train now? Maybe later, maybe tomorrow. That indecision drains energy and often leads to skipping training altogether.
Whereas if the time is fixed, there's no discussion.
Exactly. When training's scheduled, it's no longer a decision. It's an appointment that frees mental energy and increases consistency.
It sounds like many people are tired, not because they're doing too much, but because they're constantly deciding.
That's a very accurate way to put it. People often think they need more motivation, but what they really need is fewer decisions. Motivation fluctuates, structure doesn't.
That's an important distinction.
And it applies to food as well. If someone goes to a restaurant every day and studies the menu, that's another series of decisions. Many people who manage their energy will eat similar meals regularly, not out of restriction, but out of simplicity.
So routines are not about control, they're about freedom.
Exactly. Routines, free mental space, they allow you to direct your energy toward things that require creativity, empathy, and judgment.
When people hear this, some might think life becomes boring.
In practice, it's the opposite. When you remove unnecessary decisions, you have more energy to enjoy life. You're less irritable, more present, more engaged. Energy makes life richer.
And without energy, even good things feel heavy.
Exactly that. So decision fatigue is such an important concept. Once people understand it, they realize that feeling tired is not a personal failure. It's often a structural problem.
Which means it can be redesigned.
Precisely, redesign your day, not your personality.
We've talked about wasting less energy through structure and routines. Now, I'd like to move to the other side of the equation, producing energy. Where does real energy actually come from?
Real energy is produced inside the cell. So that's the most important point to understand. We often talk about energy as motivation or mood, but biologically, energy is something very concrete. It's generated mainly by structures inside our cells called mitochondria.
And what exactly do mitochondria do?
They are responsible for producing the energy that allows cells to function. Every thought you have, every movement you make, every repair process in the body depends on energy produced by mitochondria. If mitochondrial function is poor, the person feels tired, even if they sleep and eat.
So it's not just about rest.
Exactly. Rest is necessary, but it is not sufficient. The body needs signals to produce energy. And those signals come mainly from movement, nutrition, and metabolic health.
Let's talk about movement first.
Movement is one of the strongest signals the body receives. When you exercise, especially strength training and cardiovascular activity, the body understands that more energy will be required in the future. In response, it increases mitochondrial number and efficiency. That's why people who exercise regularly often report having more energy, not less.
Even though exercise feels tiring in the moment.
Exactly, that's if the paradox. Exercise consumes energy acutely, but it increases energy production chronically when people stop moving because they feel tired. The body adapts by producing even less energy over time.
So avoiding exercise because of fatigue can actually worsen fatigue.
Precisely, that's where Salmon. People say, I'm too tired to exercise, but gentle, consistent movement is often what helps restore energy.
And what about nutrition? How does that affect energy production?
Nutrition is fundamental. The mitochondria need proper fuel. When someone's diet is dominated by ultra-processed foods, refined sugars, and constant snacking, the body stays in a state of inflammation. Inflammation interferes with mitochondrial function and reduces energy production.
And inflammation isn't always obvious.
That's an important point. Low-grade inflammation doesn't necessarily cause pain or acute symptoms. It often shows up as mental fog, low motivation, slow recovery, and constant tiredness. People feel off, but they can't identify why.
So many people normalize that feeling.
Yes, they think that it's just adulthood or aging, but in many cases, not age. It's a lifestyle.
What kind of dietary patterns support better energy production?
Diets based on real, minimally processed foods, adequate protein, healthy fats, vegetables, and stable blood sugar. When blood sugar is constantly spiking and crashing, energy fluctuates dramatically throughout the day.
That explains the afternoon crash many people experience.
Exactly. They eat a high sugar lunch, feel sleepy, an hour later drink coffee, and repeat the cycle. That roller coaster is exhausting for the body.
Many people look for supplements to fix this.
Supplements can help in specific situations, but they are not the foundation. If sleep, nutrition, and movement are not in place, supplements won't compensate. They're additions, not solutions.
Stress also plays a role in energy production.
A very big role. Chronic stress keeps the body in a constant state of alert. Stress hormones stay elevated, which interferes with recovery, digestion, and energy production. Even if someone eats well and exercises, unmanaged stress can sabotage energy.
And stress today is often psychological, not physical.
Exactly. The body reacts to psychological stress the same way it reacts to physical danger. Constant worry, pressure, and anticipation drain energy continuously.
That brings us back to mental health.
Yes, mental health is inseparable from physical energy. Anxiety and depression consume enormous mental resources. They keep the mind trapped in the future or the past, which is energetically expensive.
So when someone feels exhausted, it's rarely one single.
Exactly. It's still usually a combination: poor sleep, poor nutrition, lack of movement, high stress, and too many decisions, energy problems, or systemic problems.
Which means fixing energy also requires a systemic approach.
Yes, you don't fix energy by changing one thing for 1 week. You fix it by aligning daily habits over time. When that alignment happens, energy slowly returns, and people are often surprised by how different life feels.
In a good way.
In a very good way. Clarity improves, mood improves, patience improves, energy changes how you experience everything.
You've explained energy from a very practical, biological perspective. I'd like to connect that now to longevity. When you talk about living longer, what do you actually mean by that?
I don't mean simply adding years to life. Living longer only makes sense if those years are lived with quality. Longevity for me is about arriving well at older ages. It's about being independent, mentally clear, physically capable, and emotionally present for as long as possible.
So it's not just about avoiding death.
Exactly. Death is unavoidable. What we can influence is how we live before it today. Medicine is very good at keeping people alive, but not always good at keeping them well. Many people live longer, but spend the last decades of life moving from one hospital visit to another, losing autonomy little by little. That's not the goal. That's not the goal thing.
What would be the ideal scenario in your view?
The ideal scenario is to live well for a long time and have a relatively short period of decline at the end, to be active, engaged, and functional until late in life, and then decline quickly, not slowly, over many years. That requires planning and daily care.
That is a very different way of thinking about aging.
Yes, many people think aging automatically means decline, but a large part of what we associate with aging is actually the accumulation of poor habits over time. Energy levels, muscle mass, metabolic health, these don't disappear suddenly. They erode slowly if they're not maintained.
There's also an emotional dimension to this, isn't that?
Very much. So longevity is deeply relational. It's about being present for people across generations, being able to play with your children, then your grandchildren, being able to mentor younger people to contribute with experience and wisdom. None of that is possible without energy.
You've mentioned before that your interest in longevity is personal.
It is. I was raised largely by my grandparents. They were educators, very curious people, always reading, always learning as a child. I spent a lot of time with them. At some point, I became aware that they wouldn't be there forever. I remember thinking very naively that I wanted to find a way to keep them alive.
That's a powerful memory.
It is, of course, I later understood that immortality isn't possible, but that early desire transformed into something more realistic, helping people live fully for as long as possible, helping them arrive at older ages with dignity, autonomy, and presence.
That gives your work a very human foundation.
Longevity can't be just numbers or statistics. It's about real lives, real families, real moments. Energy is what allows those moments to happen.
Many people postpone thinking about longevity. They say, I'll worry about that later.
And that's one of the biggest mistakes. Longevity is not something you fix at 60 or 70. It's built at 30, 40, 50. The habits you repeat today are shaping how you'll live decades from now.
So everyday choices matter more than people realize.
Absolutely. Sleep, nutrition, movement, stress management. These are not short-term decisions. They are investments in your future self. When people understand that, they stop seeing healthy habits as sacrifices and start seeing them as acts of care.
That reframing changes motivation.
It does. You're no longer exercising just to look better next month. You're exercising so you can carry your own groceries at 80. You're sleeping well so your brain remains sharp later in life. That perspective is very powerful.
It also brings patience in the process.
Exactly. Longevity requires patience and consistency. There are no shortcuts, but the reward is enormous. A life lived with more energy, more clarity, and more presence.
When you look at people who age well, what do they tend to have in common?
They respect basics. They move regularly. They eat simply. They sleep consistently. They maintain relationships. They don't live in constant chaos. And importantly, they adapt as the body changes. They adjust their habits instead of fighting reality.
Adaptation instead of denial.
Exactly. Denial wastes energy. Adaptation preserves it.
And that brings us back to where we started, energy as the foundation.
Yes, energy is what connects performance today with quality of life tomorrow. Without energy, longevity becomes just survival. With energy, it becomes living.
We've talked about energy, habits, and longevity. I'd like to make this even more practical. How does the body signal that something is wrong before a real breakdown happens?
The body is constantly communicating. The problem is that many people don't listen until the signal becomes pain or disease. Early signs are usually subtle. You wake up tired even after sleeping. You feel mentally foggy. Small tasks feel heavier than they should. These are not random experiences. They're signals.
Many people dismiss those signs.
Yes, they say that's just stress or that's just age. But when tiredness becomes constant, it's no longer normal. It means the body is struggling to maintain balance.
What are some of the most common early indicators you see?
Persistent fatigue is the first one, then irritability, loss of patience, difficulty concentrating, reduced motivation. People also notice that recovery takes longer. A bad night of sleep affects them for days instead of hours.
Recovery speed is an important marker.
Very important. When recovery slows down, it's a clear sign that the system is overloaded. Another indicator is loss of pleasure. Activities that used to be enjoyable start to feel like obligations. That's often misinterpreted as a psychological issue alone, but many times it's an energy issue.
How do relationships reflect low energy?
Low energy shows up as emotional withdrawal. People become less available. They listen less. So they get irritated more easily. It's not that they don't care, it's that they don't have enough energy to engage.
That can create misunderstanding.
Exactly. Partners, children, colleagues may think the person is distant or uninterested when in reality they're exhausted. At energy deficits often masquerade as personality changes.
Are there physical signs as well?
Yes, frequent headaches, muscle pain, digestive discomfort, low immunity. People catch colds more easily, wounds heal more slowly. These are signs that the body is prioritizing survival over optimization.
At that point, should people seek medical evaluation?
Absolute self-awareness is important, but data helps. Blood tests can reveal anemia, vitamin deficiencies, thyroid issues, insulin resistance, chronic inflammation. These are not abstract concepts. They directly affect energy production.
Some people are afraid of looking at data.
Yes, because data forces responsibility, but data is not judgment. It's that information. Knowing what's happening allows you to act more precisely instead of guessing.
How do you balance listening to the body with using objective indicators?
They complement each other. Subjective perception tells you that something is wrong. Objective data helps you understand why. Together, they create clarity.
Many people only react when symptoms become severe.
Factors very common. People wait for pain to force change, but wisdom is changing before suffering becomes unavoidable. Early adjustments are easier and far more effective.
What kind of adjustments are we talking about?
Simple ones most of the time: improving sleep consistency, reducing ultra-processed foods, scheduling movement, limiting constant connectivity, creating moments of real rest. These are not dramatic changes, but they have a profound effect over time.
It sounds like prevention is mostly about awareness and consistency.
Exactly. Prevention is quiet. It doesn't feel urgent. That's why people ignore it. But it's what allows you to keep living with energy instead of constantly repairing damage.
How do you help people overcome the tendency to ignore these signs?
By reframing them. Fatigue is not weakness, it's feedback. The body is incredibly intelligent. When it signals discomfort, it's asking for adjustment, not punishment.
That reframing changes how people relate to themselves.
It does. Instead of fighting the body, they start collaborating with it. That's when real change becomes possible.
And that collaboration seems to be the common thread throughout this conversation.
Yes, high performance, energy, longevity, they all come from alignment, not force.
As we come closer to the end of this conversation, I keep thinking about how different this approach is from what most people hear about success. There's no rush in what you're describing, no obsession with doing more. It's almost the opposite.
Yes, it's just a different logic. Most people are taught to accelerate when something feels difficult, but many times the real solution is to slow down and look carefully at how energy is being used and produced. When you do that, a lot of problems become clearer.
Throughout this conversation, one idea keeps coming back: alignment.
Alignment is essential when your habits, your body, and your responsibilities are aligned. Life feels lighter, not easy, but lighter. When they're misaligned, even simple things feel heavy.
Many people listening might be asking themselves right now, where do I start, not in theory, but in real life tomorrow morning?
I would say start by observing. Before changing anything, observe how you feel when you wake up, how you feel midday, how you feel at night. Notice where energy drops. Notice what drains you and what restores you. That awareness alone already changes behavior.
Almost like creating a map.
Exactly. You can't improve what you don't notice. Once people see patterns, the next steps become obvious. Maybe it's asleep. Maybe it's constant connectivity. Maybe it's lack of movement. You don't need to fix everything. You need to fix the most obvious leak first.
That idea of leaks is very powerful.
Because energy loss is often subtle. It's not one big mistake. It's dozens of small ones repeated every day. The good news is that small corrections, when done consistently, create very big changes over time.
You've emphasized consistency many times.
Because consistency is what the body responds to. Extreme efforts don't build energy. Regular habits do. The body adapts slowly, but very reliably to what you do most often.
That requires patience.
It does. And patience is difficult in a culture that wants immediate results. But when people experience even small improvements in energy, they become more patient because life starts to feel better.
If you could leave listeners with one central idea from this entire conversation, what would it be?
That energy is not a luxury. It's a prerequisite. Without energy, goals don't matter. Relationships suffer and life becomes survival instead of living. Taking care of energy is not selfish. It's necessary.
That reframes self-care completely.
Yes. Self-care is often misunderstood as indulgence. In reality, it's maintenance. Just like you maintain a car or a business, you need to maintain your body and mind. Ignoring maintenance always leads to breakdown.
This conversation feels like an invitation to live more intentionally.
That's a beautiful way to put it. Intention changes everything. When people live on autopilot, energy leaks everywhere. When they live intentionally, even demanding lives become sustainable.
Dr. Brooks, I want to thank you deeply for this conversation, for your clarity, your honesty, and the way you translate complex ideas into something people can actually apply.
Thank you, Edward. I really appreciate the space you created here. Conversations like this allow people to reflect without pressure, and that's very valuable. I would be very happy to return for a future conversation.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode and that this content makes a difference in your life. If you'd like to suggest other topics for the channel or share what you thought about this episode, feel free to leave a comment. Until next time.
Bye-bye.